Biden is up based on the polls. I don't think he's up as much as they are saying he is up. I have shown you that CNN and their polling is very dishonest, and they undersample young voters and oversample old voters. So, Joe Biden's up by 30. Well, if you oversample people over 50 and undersample people under 50, you're probably going to get more establishment voters. Of course, there are a lot of progressives who are older, including those watching right now. So it's not to say like old people are all, in the tank for Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, and the establishment. Of course not. But by the data in 2016 and just history, the majority of older voters generally are for candidates like Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, Obama, etc. So we have basically this narrative forming, because really presidential politics, but politics in general, is more about narratives than reality. The campaigns and their press people and their advisors basically form a narrative. They feed the narrative to their stenographers and public relations people, which are on CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, because they're not really journalists. They're more stenographers, right? So there's a narrative now of electability. And that narrative says that, do you want to go with your heart or your brain? And we heard this in 2016, because your heart might want Bernie Sanders. This is what we're being fed. But your brain, the way to beat Trump is Joe Biden. This is complete and utter bullshit. Oop! Demonetized. Sorry. Super chat. Swear jar. Let's go. This is a complete nonsense, of course. It's not backed up by any data, but the narrative is the narrative, and tell the lie, repeat the lie, repeat the lie, repeat the lie, it becomes the truth. This is the old authoritarian playbook. So this myth that Joe Biden is the most electable versus Donald Trump. The bottom line is the election will again be decided in Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. I also think Arizona could be in play. I don't think Florida will be in play as much. I think Trump will probably win Florida again. Florida is, generally speaking, it's a swing state, but it's becoming more Republican for reasons I don't understand. So I think Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. I do think Arizona might be in play. And there might be, some states in play that we're not thinking of yet. Well, that remains to be seen, but we know those Midwest states are basically in play. Wisconsin went Democrat until 2016. Wisconsin voted for a Democrat for president every time since 1984. So 2016 was the exception to the rule. Michigan, generally speaking, had gone for Democrats for a very long time. Pennsylvania, generally speaking, is Democrat. So then you look at, if these are the states that this is based on, then you look at who has a better chance in those states. Narrative, again, the word narrative. The narrative is middle class Joe, Union Joe, all these things. But do you think a lot of those people in Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, before 2016, do you really think that they ever knew that much about Hillary Clinton? Like, they weren't voting for Hillary Clinton as a senator. She was a senator in New York, right? So the voters in Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, they were introduced mostly to Hillary Clinton's record in 2008 when she ran the first time, 2016. Sure, of course they knew about Bill Clinton, but they probably didn't really know, what Hillary Clinton was for or against, what she was running on as a senator in New York. I mean, I don't really know every senator's record from other states that I'm not in. I mean, I do because I cover politics, but normal people don't. So the point is, most of this narrative, again, about Joe Biden being like, a union guy and for the people, and, he's the perfect blue guy for blue collar workers, is just mythology. It's not based on anything other than corporate media, propaganda, and spin. And I will tell you, because I had the benefit or the trauma of covering many, many, many Trump rallies. I probably covered Trump rallies slash events 30 to 40 in 2016. Those voters, their number one voting issue was not Russia. Their number one voting issue wasn't even healthcare. Their number one voting issue was NAFTA and immigration, because a lot of them have been brainwashed into thinking that immigrants are what's taking their jobs. But on NAFTA, they were right, and they are right. NAFTA was a disaster for Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. It also wasn't so great for Illinois and other industrial states that still go Democrat. So I guarantee you, and I have read a lot of these polls, most of these polls say the same voters that favor Joe Biden don't know most of his record in the Senate. The majority of the people in these polls, when asked, are you familiar with Joe Biden's record as a senator, this and that? I think the last poll I read showed 51% said, no, not familiar at all. We are a lifetime away from the first primary. Bernie Sanders campaign, if they want to continue with this kumbaya, we're going to run a positive campaign. I don't necessarily agree with that. You're running against 22 candidates. You're running against the entire corporate media. You're running against every local and state official. It's time to get down in the mud. It's time to run some ads telling these voters in these states what Joe Biden's record is, because there's plenty of tape of him cheering for NAFTA, of him talking up the TPP, of him basically talking up this soundbite of him saying, I don't think 500 billionaires are the reason people are suffering in America. The video is there. The record exists. And I am here to tell you that the electability myth, Joe Biden is an electability disaster. Keyword, disaster. In Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. And you might say, whoa, he's from Scranton. Doesn't matter. When the record is shown, and it's probably not going to be shown by CNN. It's probably not going to be shown by the New York Times. We know this. But when that record is shown, when those clips start circulating, and we're already starting to see, there's great journalists out there. Walker Bragman, for one instance, he's an independent journalist. I think his Twitter is at Walker Bragman. Follow him. He's unearthing just astounding clips from Joe Biden as a senator, like from the 90s, even further back. He's pro-NAFTA. Lock up all the black people and throw away the key. He's not saying it like that, but he's basically saying that. Just essentially, if you turned away from the clip that he's been posting, you don't know if you're listening to Joe Biden or Ted Cruz. It's hard to distinguish. So I'm telling you, based on having covered the campaign, but also reading each state's exit polls. I read Michigan's exit polls. I read Wisconsin's exit polls. I read Ohio's exit polls. I read Pennsylvania's exit polls. Their top voting issue was trade and immigration. Take immigration off the table for a second. Do you think these people are going to be cheering for middle-class Joe? What's he going to say about him supporting NAFTA? What's he going to say about TPP? What's he going to say about the continued offshoring of jobs? What's he going to say about automation that is essentially forget the plants that are never coming back, but continuing to erase workers in these states and other states? What's he going to say about artificial intelligence? This is somebody that is a cheerleader for global, what do they call it? The global marketplace, and trade as free trade. He is basically a cheerleader for corporations and banks writing America's trade deals and selling off the jobs to the lowest bidder as progress. This is who Joe Biden is. This is the same person Barack Obama is. This is the same person Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, John Podesta, and the whole gang is. That's not going to sell. It's not like, these people were so for Trump in 2016 because of NAFTA and him saying, I'm going to, repeal NAFTA and I'm going to bring the jobs back. And NAFTA suddenly isn't an issue 3 years later. It's still an issue. And Trump has not brought those jobs back. Those factories are still closed in the deindustrialized Midwest. Those YMCA's are still closed. Those communities are still decimated in Altoona, Pennsylvania, in Detroit, in Flint, Cleveland. I could go on. From deindustrialization, but also the offshoring of jobs. So Joe Biden, I mean, unless he does a full mea culpa and says, I was wrong, I've learned from my past, and we need to get much tougher on trade. We need to, have safeguards in for workers that are displaced, universal basic income, whatever. None of that stuff's going to happen because his donors won't allow it.